quick shout out to today's sponsor, Katana. We'll hear more from Katana later in today's episode.
Nothing said on 0x Research is a recommendation to buy or sell securities or tokens. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and any views expressed by anyone on the show are solely our opinions, not financial advice. Boccaccio, Ryan, and our guests may hold positions in the companies, funds, or projects discussed.
Alrighty, welcome back to another episode of 0x Research Livestream. Today, joined by not my co-host Boccaccio, but Mark Arjun instead. Bach couldn't make it today. He's feeling a little down. And we're having a bit of a base day today, kicking things off here with Alex at Dromos Labs, or core contributor to Aerodrome, as some of you may know. And we'll be following that up with a couple other base teams later on today. But how are you guys doing today? Glad to have you on, Alex.
Oh boy, got to get myself off mute. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, all good. It's Monday and I'm ready to start the week.
Heck yeah. Before we kick it into anything, I just want to do a quick run through Blockworks. We are still hiring research data analysts. We're looking for folks that love to dig into on-chain data, build dashboards, understand SQL, building and deciphering on-chain data. So if that's you, someone you know, let them know. Apply today. Find the link in the show notes or on the blockworks.co website to apply. We're always looking for great talent. We've hired a few people across, the research team, the data team, advisory team over the past several months, and I think we're still looking for more. So if you're interested, reach out, and we'd love to hear from you. And we don't have to shill any conferences. DAS was concluded, so we'll skip that one for this week. Otherwise, I think we can kind of jump into it for today and chat with Alex here about Aerodrome. So I guess maybe, Alex, if you want to just lead things off, give the viewers a little bit of a background on yourself, on Dromos, on Aerodrome, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So yeah, it's great to be here. Great to, I guess, meet some of your folks in real life. I mainly know you as PFPs online. So yeah, on myself, I think like a lot of people in crypto, very wild, twisty, turny career journey that got me here. Worked in politics, worked in tech, worked in consulting, got the DeFi bug, DeFi summer 2021. Was having so much fun doing that while locked in my apartment, just decided to quit my job. Had no real idea to do what, but all I knew is I wanted to spend all my time in this space, learning it. Had the good fortune, right, to start contributing to a variety of projects. In doing so, met a handful of other very smart people in Discord. This was organized around the launch of Solidly, right, which was Andre Croney's sort of last big project, the last cycle. And we saw an opportunity to sort of take the model and the foundation that Andre had built with Solidly and adapt it, right, and continue to improve it and roll it out. And so initially it was with Velodrome on Optimism mainnet, and it quickly rose the ranks to become kind of the leading AMM on Optimism, and then extended across the Optimism superchain. So it's now across about 11 chains. And Aerodrome, obviously on Base. We were very, very early onto Base and have been the leading exchange on Base since day one. And so Dromos, right, is, I guess, new in terms of being a sort of name and public identity, but is a thing that's been around for that 3-year journey, right? So it's the development company that builds the MetaDex, right? The sort of liquidity operating system that powers both Velodrome and Aerodrome. And yeah, just last week we went live. So you now get to sort of see the faces and names of this incredible leadership team that has contributed to both Velodrome and Aerodrome, built out the sort of MetaDex operating system. And we will be having a big event in New York to talk a little bit about the future on November 12th.
Awesome. Thanks for the background there. Maybe to kick things off, since you talked a bit about sort of the foundations with like Solidly and the sort of V33 model, I guess this is something, we've had like the Pendle founder on before, talking about his misgivings maybe with that tokenomics design. I guess I'd be curious from your perspective, whether with Aerodrome, Velodrome, the various projects there, whether this particular tokenomics model has like worked out for you. If you were to redo things again from zero, would you go with the same model or adapt a different design? It receives a bit of criticism kind of broadly within the industry today.
Yeah. I think I would take a step back first and just think a little bit about, DEXs, right? And so the history of DEXs, right, is initially you had, of course, Bancor, which took this idea that Vitalik had of this, AMM, which was, at that point, still a very revolutionary idea that you could bring this on chain and create these marketplaces in decentralized ways. And then you had Uniswap, I think, really perfect that model, right? But on the Uniswap side is still fundamentally a two-sided marketplace. So you've got traders who come and exchange tokens, pay fees. Those fees are paid to the liquidity providers in exchange for them putting up the tokens that are being swapped through. And it's an elegant thing. I think the idea that this could just be a two-sided marketplace, but the failure of it, I think, was exposed, with the sushi swap vampire attack. And I know that this is like almost ancient history now, so it's probably useful to go back and remember how significant that was. But 50% of Uniswap's TVL was vamped away by Uniswap or by SushiSwap in about a week. So what did that teach us kind of about a two-sided marketplace? It's that if you can provide any degree of additional value on top in the form of a token, that liquidity providers, which are the bedrock of an exchange, are incredibly mercenary and will move, at the drop of a hat. So then you saw Uniswap, of course, go and introduce a token, I think very much as a response to this, because they had, I think, been publicly very skeptical on whether or not a token was needed in these systems, but that was a pretty existential push. And so they rolled out their own token. And so now you do, in some ways, on Uniswap, have a three-sided marketplace, but it's kind of with one leg of the stool chopped off and is something totally separate, right? Because the Uniswap token is still fundamentally just a governance token. And what it's primarily used for is to be sold by team and by insiders to subsidize the costs of the system, the foundation, various contributors, audits, marketing, things like that. And, to date, hasn't had any sort of value accrual flow back to it. So if you think about you are a participant in that system, your token is basically mainly used to subsidize 100% fee take that LPs can continue to have, because otherwise there'd be some sort of value needing to come out of that system to sort of pay for these broader costs. So I think when we think about the BE tokenomics model, right, and how it layers on to these three stakeholder groups, right, traders, liquidity providers, and token operators, right, the folks sort of operating the protocol. The job that needs to be done by any system is it needs to ensure that traders get the best execution on their trades. You can only give that to traders if you're giving LPs the best reward. So that's got to be fees and some. And then you're giving operators, the full current and future productive value of the exchange. And that's trading fees, certainly, but there's a whole bunch of other things, right? We've shown the ability to internalize the value of incentives, which like on Uniswap, you'd have to go to Merkle, like a third party, to incentivize on top. We can internalize that into the system. And then most recently with our community launch model, right, which is basically a sort of on-chain version of Binance Alpha, where rather than giving up 10% of your token supply to market makers or to a centralized exchange, you give a much smaller amount to BE Aero, bring that value from a token launch into the system, wrap it all in the token, the fees, the incentives, the launches, and of course, there's much more you can internalize, and then direct that token to liquidity providers to give them a much higher reward than any sort of fee-based DEX. So I think for us, the broad strokes of the model, we have run our head against any number of different ways to modify it or change it or improve on it. And in fact, there's been like, a flood of other iterations on the original solidly model that you've seen, where people think, hey, maybe we've discovered some way to offset this particular aspect of it, and that'll make it better. But usually what it ends up doing is just kind of breaking what is a very carefully calibrated system. So we do think that there is a lot that can be done, but it's definitely more in dialing things in versus overhauling it. Because as of right now, Aerodrome is not only the second largest DEX across EVM, second only to Uniswap. It's the highest revenue producing DEX by a large margin. And it has shown an ability, right, to dominate the MetaDex model, dominate against Uniswap, against Curve, against Fluid, anywhere they compete head to head. So no DEX since Uniswap has shown this ability to have that sort of comprehensive edge. And that goes, I think, straight to the core of the tokenomics themselves. And so, I don't think I would change anything massively fundamentally. I think there's a lot you could do to continue to dial it in. And I think like most of the folks who are more critical of it, they're critical of the path that it took to get to a more like refined version of it, what Curve did, what a lot of other VE systems have done. But it really does depend on things like you can't have extractive teams in there. You can't have privileged intermediaries. You have to return the full current and future productive value to the token and all of those types of things. But if you do it, I think Aerodrome, Velodrome, its dominance are proof that it works.
Yeah, I think that's a great point you make. Clearly, if internally the goal is to lock and then stake the receive or sell the received rewards continuously and not be aligned with the protocol, then your outcome is not going to be maybe the desired result that other token holders are looking for. I guess maybe as a follow-up question to that, I saw that Aerodrome has started a new programmatic buyback model as well recently. And then I guess as part of that, the purpose there is to buy back the tokens, but then lock them as well. I guess, maybe you can speak to this as well. Like, how does this play into the model? Like, what are the thoughts here on incorporating a buyback? Obviously, buybacks have become a big sort of like broader narrative as it comes to value accrual to tokens lately.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Actually, don't get the chance to talk about this very much, so I'm excited to, because as far as I know, Aero's the only token that both distributes 100% of the revenue that the protocol produces to voters, right, the people participating in the system. But on top of that, about 30% of the lock supply, so that means about 30% of the total revenue, gets put into buybacks. And those buybacks go into locks, right? And because locks are 4 years and 98% of all locks are perpetually kept max lock, that's basically a permanent remove from circulation. And so this has been going on, the sort of buybacks for quite some time. There's three sort of versions of it. There's the relays, which are users and protocols who've deposited their locked position into a relay, and that relay votes, takes those rewards, auto compounds them back into Aero, locks it all as VE Aero. There is the flight school program, which goes and buys back and locks and then redistributes the locks as a boost to anybody who goes locks their token. So if you lock, you might get like a 40, 50% boost on your lock, which is pretty incredible, based just on tokens that were bought back. And then there is public goods. And public goods has always had the ability to be more strategic about when it is actually buying back, right? The first two are programmatic. That's just going to happen each and every week. The public goods fund can be a bit more strategic. They can look at fundamental metrics associated with the protocol. They can be looking at overall market sentiment. They can be doing all this sort of stuff. And so the change here is not that these sort of buybacks haven't been happening for some time, as you can see in this chart. It is that now that there's an actual sort of algorithmic, much more sort of TradFi philosophy underpinning them to ensure that they are doing those buybacks, those locks at the most optimal times. But the net of this is very cool, right? Because if you think about the top 50 tokens, about 90% of them don't pass on any yield whatsoever. And this is a model, right, that not only distributes 100% of the revenue, but then on top of that, there's this extra 30% putting that buy pressure, lock pressure right back into it. And so I think it's like very, very differentiated, especially when the standard is your tokens are sold.
Great points. That makes a lot of sense. I think great coverage of sort of the broader tokenomics and kind of revenue model there. I guess maybe in the context of Aerodrome as sort of like a leading venue on Base and maybe the relationship with Coinbase there. Base and Coinbase, they've sort of been slowly starting to integrate on-chain products sort of into their broader strategy with the exchange in the Coinbase app. I'm guessing, I'm curious if you guys have seen a material change. I think one of the bigger changes was Coinbase integrating DEX routing on Base natively into their app. So curious if you've seen that, impact Aerodrome trading volumes, maybe the CB assets as a piece of that. Broad thoughts there.
Yeah. Maybe separate it out. I'll hit the CB assets portion first because that has been incredible, right? Aerodrome now hosts not only the top wrapped ETH pool anywhere in DeFi, but the top Bitcoin pool, on-chain Bitcoin pool, right, anywhere in DeFi, and the top FX pool, right, and EURC to USDC, anywhere in DeFi. And we're seeing the rest of the sort of class of CB assets, CBXRP, CB Doge, continuing to sort of grow in their adoption. And we think this is super powerful to make, Base and Aerodrome the sort of top venue to trade all the best assets at the best rates, to know that the asset that you're trading with, right, on these majors is 1-to-1 on Coinbase. They're just incredible products. And yes, we've seen a lot there. And we think there's a lot more growth to go to bring every top traded token to Base and to deliver the best trading execution on them. The other side of that, though, of the sort of DEX integration, I mean, this is the sort of thing that we've been talking about in DeFi for a long time, right? That the promise was that you could build incredible new decentralized tools and platforms, DEXs, lending markets, things like that. That unlocks primitives, product services that are not possible in TradFi, or at least you can even deliver them much more efficiently than what they can deliver in TradFi. And with these sort of integrations, we're seeing the first literal expressions of like the DeFi mullet, right? This is TradFi in the front. This is DeFi in the back. And it is like mutually beneficial to everybody because for Coinbase, they get to now offer to their customers products and services that they would never have been able to deliver themselves in centralized ways, or at least it would have been very costly, might have invited a lot of legal and regulatory overhead, all this sort of stuff. They just get to be the distribution arm of these amazing things, like DEX pools, like the Bitcoin lending product and things like that. And I would expect we see a lot more. And then on the DeFi side, our protocols now get a level of distribution that is frankly unprecedented. Because while it might feel like there's maybe a lot of people in DeFi, relative to 100 million Coinbase users, I mean, it's nothing. And to have now any token that trades on Aerodrome available to every customer on Coinbase, or at least it's not fully global, but all US customers, sans New York, and continuing to roll out, is like a massive increase, like orders of magnitude in the access that people now have to our protocol, to all the tokens that launch there. Two observations from it so far. One is we're definitely seeing trading volume from Coinbase increasing, but I think it's slow and steady right now, in the sense of they have just completed the rollout. There's not a lot of work that's been done yet around sort of discovery and helping people find these things and stuff like that. And so I think we're just in the earliest days of seeing their users, adopt and tap into these things. But I think what we have seen on the other side that has been an order of magnitude change is the amount of inbound interest in coming and launching and deploying on Base and on Aerodrome. Because just think about this. For most folks who have been building, right, and launching tokens, and that could be any form of token, that could be utility coins, governance coins, that could be memes, that could be creators, that could be like whatever it is. The pinnacle, right, or the big threshold so many people want to hit is, gosh, I want to get it listed on a centralized exchange one day. I will know I've really done good work, if I am trading on Coinbase, on Binance, etc. And what this integration gives to these projects is the ability to get that distribution in just a few clicks, right? You just show up, you deploy on Aerodrome, on Base, and you are trading in the Coinbase front end. And that has meant that we have seen a massive influx of projects. These are projects from other ecosystems who are looking to bridge their stuff over to Base. We've seen an influx of projects that were thinking about launching on another network, now wanting to do it on Base. And I think it makes a ton of sense because that is just a level of distribution that is so differentiated that it's very difficult, I think, for other chains and networks to compete with it. So it's been crazy. And then you combine that with our community launch model, right? In this way that you can sort of launch your token in a fair launch way, right? At 10x the efficiency of traditional sort of centralized exchange offerings here, and still trade on a centralized exchange in day one. And it's just been kind of overwhelming amount of demand. And I think you'll continue to see that in the coming months with all the folks sort of bringing their tokens over to Base.
I'm curious, with that increased distribution, do you have any insight into whether it's coming more from the retail or institutional side, or is it still too early to tell?
I think it's still too early to tell. I think I would love to see, deeper and better analytics on it. I've given that feedback to the Coinbase team quite a bit, and understandable why maybe they want to keep it a bit close to the chest right now. They want to make sure nobody's gaming things, stuff like that. But I would expect that most of the initial push here is around retail access, right? But over time, I would definitely expect, I believe their self-custodial wallet, or the smart wallet, that is now basically the back end of Coinbase users being able to tap into these things, is also integrated into their institutional products. So I think the vision is Coinbase becomes the everything exchange. And it's not just even the coins we know today, but this is how I think Coinbase, in a compliant way, brings to their customers tokenized stocks, equities, real world assets, and they will want to offer both their institutional and retail customers access to these things built on DeFi rails.
Yeah, awesome. That makes sense. And my follow-up was, I love the DeFi Mullet thesis. I've been a believer in it for some time, and I love to see it playing out in real life. But to kind of, maybe throw a little wrench here, is there a risk to this DeFi Mullet? They normally say you control the users, you control the flow, you control the margin. Maybe, Coinbase can go a different way. They can integrate other partners. Maybe Aerodrome wants to build out its own distribution. Talk me through on that.
Yeah. So it's interesting because if you think about traditional listings, Coinbase had to invest, unbelievable amounts of time, energy into every single listing, right? They could list thousands of tokens. They could not list millions of tokens. And if you think about the collapsing life cycles of tokens, even if Coinbase on a Sunday calls in the entire legal compliance on-chain team, listing team to get something done, you might have already missed the primary window whereby that asset's going to be a really great one to trade on your exchange, right? So on one side of it, I think this is great for Coinbase because a centralized entity is never going to be able to keep up with the pace of permissionless issuance. And a centralized entity is never going to want to take on all the risk of all these types of assets that is unlocked by these permissionless rails. And so for Coinbase, it's best of both worlds. You get to increase by several orders of magnitude the number of products and services you can distribute to customers. You can take the same amount of fee on top, as I think Brian has said that they will be doing, like on DEX trades, while also, just growing massively what you can distribute, right? So that's definitely a win for them. But I also think it's kind of a cool model for Base because they're also going to earn at least something on every bit of the sequencer revenue produced as a portion of distributing these on-chain rails. And when that flow hits Aerodrome, they've got a locked token position. Coinbase Ventures' largest liquid investment that I know of was their purchase of Aero tokens on the open market, and they've locked those tokens. So they have a claim on the fees generated by flow that hits us through their own front end. So I think there's an argument on that side that they actually have a model here to grow their basically margin on all of this activity while growing the amount of activity that they can generate. But then on the other side, I think there's the contrast of somebody like Uniswap, who they would be the example. They do want to go out there and fight for the distribution, right? They monetize their front end. So if you're not using their front end, the Labs entity doesn't make money. So they're competing with Coinbase. They're going to be competing in essence with Robinhood with anybody else who wants to play here. They also have a competitive wallet product. So they're competing with all the wallet providers and the front ends. And they now have a chain. So now they're in a competitive position with all the different chain ecosystems they've previously supported. I think our vision is that there will be a lot of DeFi mullets. And we want to be that sort of neutral infrastructure layer that is distributed by all of them, and that we will maintain our edge by ensuring that we are always the venue that provides the best execution for them. So we are the natural layer for them to tap into. And also, by the way, just like Coinbase, any of them can come take a stake in the protocol, right? And participate and earn rewards in the same way as anybody else, while still maintaining its neutrality and all of that sort of stuff. So I think it's the best of both worlds on both sides. It's difficult to see, who wouldn't win here or in collapsing it, if it doesn't have more cost than gain. But yeah, I think it's very important for us to not try to compete with the distribution layer. We want to enable every distribution layer.
I really love that answer. The existing synergies with Base, with Coinbase, the way the neutrality of the layer plus the framework of the other competition on distribution layers is what kind of sets this DeFi mullet up for longer term success. That's great. Thanks.
Yep, great points overall. And I think we're seeing more teams lean into this. Obviously Coinbase, but we've seen Binance experimenting with this with their Binance Alpha Launchpad and other integrations with the on-chain sort of trading ecosystem. So I think it makes a ton of sense. Well, we are out of time with you, Alex, but I guess if you want to give one last shout out to any of the teams, Dromos Labs, Aerodrome, Velodrome, where can people find you?
You can find me. I'm at Wagme Alexander on Twitter. You can find Velodrome, Aerodrome, Phi on Twitter. But then, at Dromos Labs. And if you haven't already, if you are in New York, definitely check out our announcement and RSVP for the big event. We've got some exciting stuff to share. So we hope you're there. And if not, we will also be live streaming it around the world.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on today, Alex. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, guys.
Have a good one. Before we pull in, we've got Merlin from Morpho joining us here in a second. I want to do a quick shout out to our sponsor for today's stream. Quick shout out to Katana. Katana is an L2 built for DeFi and is pioneering the ecosystem category of productive TVL, believing that change should be graded on how efficiently assets are put to work in DeFi rather than just total value locked. From now until the end of November, users that bridge to Katana can earn boosted yield from CAT incentive campaigns, added VaultBridge yield, and other chain revenue. Follow the link in today's show notes to get started. All right. And I see we do have Merlin here joining us. Thanks for coming on today, Merlin. How are you doing?
All right. How are you?
Great. Glad we could have you on for a bit of our kind of base coverage episode today, representing Morpho. I guess if you want to kick things off, just give us some background on yourself and on Morpho to get things going, and we'll go from there.
Right. Background on me. I don't know. We studied Morpho during our high school, something like that. So we studied as students in our dorm rooms. We spotted some inefficiencies in DeFi protocols at the time in the lending space, and so we started working on that. We raised a first round, which allowed us to actually pay for the audit and the legal aspect, which was a crazy amount at the beginning. And because we were students, we had no money at all. So it allowed us to kickstart that, and we created what we called at the time Morpho optimizers that were like protocol on top of existing lending pools. And actually we reached like 2 billions while it was like in the middle of the bear market, so very high growth. But we realized that lending pools had like many inefficiencies and trade-offs, and so we realized, hey, let's start our own lending protocol that was fully independent and that fixed all those issues. And this is why we built Morpho, what we call Morpho Blue at the time, which is Morpho V1, and now has 13 billions of total deposits across many different chains, especially Base, which is maybe the second. This is the second largest instance of the Morpho protocol. So that's it. That's it in a few lines.
Gotcha. I guess more recently this year, you guys announced Morpho V2 with fixed term loans. I guess I'm curious, any thoughts you have there on sort of the initial rollout, like usage, and where you're thinking about that product kind of longer term?
Yeah. So I think Morpho V1 is quite different already from like existing lending pools, because you have isolated markets, and you have this lending primitive where you can permissionlessly create any market that you want with any collateral, any loan assets. And on top of that, you have vaults that are managed and created by a risk curator, how we call that. And each curator can create their own vault that targets a specific risk profile. And so you can create different USDC vault, for instance, one that is low risk, low rewards, and one that is high risk, high rewards. So it's very different from the one-size-fits-all model of other lending pools. So the cool thing is here, you can, like, the risk is a spectrum, and that is continuous. So you can really cater to many different risk profiles. There are some caveats, is because markets are isolated. There's some like liquidity fragmentation around that we solve in some ways, but it's not out of the box. And in a world where there's I don't know, thousands or even millions of tokenized assets, reward assets that are tokenized, equities that come on chain, etc. You have the intuition that if everything is isolated, you have a lot of liquidity fragmentation, and if you put everything in one single protocol, then if users are exposed to that, it does not scale. It will blow up at some point. And with V2, actually, it will be an intent-based protocol with fixed rate, fixed term. And the intent-based things means that you don't have liquidity fragmentation anymore, because as a lender or a borrower, you can express to which assets you want to be exposed to. And you don't have to commit into one specific market, but you say, okay, I'm a lender, I want to lend against every instance, different flavors, I would say, of BTC, let's say. Or maybe I want to expose to this specific asset, or only to people that have KYC 1, 2, but not 3. And you can just express this intent. You don't have to commit your capital. And whenever there's someone that matches those requirements, then the liquidity is lent to that person. So that solves a lot of the problem that DeFi is facing currently, where you can see like some protocol that needs to deploy a totally different instance just because it's reward asset focused or anyway. So that's for the intent-based design, and there's the fixed rate, fixed term. Fixed rate, it's because there's a lot of demand for that. Usually, if you are using TradFi Rails, it's usually fixed rate, at least on the borrowing side. And this is a huge demand. And in fact, it's a very nice primitive to have on chain. And it makes the whole Morpho V2 design much better and efficient. So that's why we have the fixed rate. And fixed term is, if you have fixed rate, you always have fixed term. Else, that means that the rate will change at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's, like you mentioned, in TradFi, it's always fixed rates. That's something this space has been missing for some time. We need fixed rates to kind of have like set the interest rate market and to build derivatives and more useful and complex instruments on top of it. Just very briefly, can you maybe explain to the audience how you achieve these fixed rates, like as opposed to how they were done in the past?
Yeah. So first, I think that in any businesses, there's one thing that is super important is timing your solution with the maturity of the market. So at the time, I think there were very early experiments of fixed rate in a space where people were not super professional and mature enough to understand the product and deal with that, and there was not enough liquidity, etc. And so having instantaneous experience that you had with the first landing pool design was insane. It was an insane improvement in terms of UX. You could deposit and withdraw at any time, and everything was super smooth. You had like just one button to click. And Morpho Optimizer at the time had the same experience. The value prop at that time, we were saying like same risk parameters, same experience, but better rates. And it was just a whole thing. But we realized that it won't scale to all the opportunities that are currently in the world. And so we need a way to scale it. And this is why we moved to Morpho V1. But obviously it was still viable rate because it was still the easiest path to build that. But now we have curators. The word curator was kind of coined by Morpho team actually, and now we have all those kind of risk curator, risk managers that are coming on chain, and they have like built a knowledge, and also some are from the TradFi space, and they're bringing that on chain, and so we have like much more professional and mature teams that know how it works, and they will be able to apply all their knowledge, not in the TradFi world, but in DeFi. And that will make like dealing with fixed rate much easier, because instead of having the user I need to roll my position or those kind of things, people will just deposit into a vault, and this will be the curator that will roll the position, take care of the liquidity management and those kind of things, which is quite complex if you're like a user. Even me, I don't want to do that job. It's completely like a risk curator job.
So in essence, like curators end up sort of pricing out, a lot of the terms for some of these fixed rate, fixed term vaults, basically, and then users can choose to.
Yeah, exactly. So you can like, as a lender or borrower, you cannot be on both sides. So you can take offers. So you check the book and all the offers, and you can take whatever which one you want. But you can also make offers. So you can play on both sides and be maker or taker.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. I guess maybe as part of this, I think obviously a lot of Morpho's growth we've seen as a result of integrations, and the Coinbase base one is probably the largest to date, I would guess. The Coinbase rolled out lending BTC through the Coinbase app, but then it interacts with Base and Morpho on Base to do that. I guess from your perspective, like, can you talk about the impact of that integration, like where you see that relationship with Coinbase and Base going longer term?
So first, I think it was kind of a 0 to 1 in the DeFi industry, in the sense that, and you were talking a bit earlier about the DeFi Mullet, etc. And this is something that we're strongly pushing, because we think that if we want to grow the pie and we want to grow the DeFi space, we need to bring more like the TradFi, or at least the retail users' liquidity on chain. And to do so, of course, they can set up, like, I don't know, Ledger wallet and take care of the seed phrase, etc. But most of those users, like some of them, like, they don't care. They just want a super nice UX and one-click button and get access to the best yield. Because at the end of the day, this is the only thing that they care about is, I don't know, like protecting their purchasing power. And we think that the DeFi Mullet is kind of the Trojan horse to put more users into the DeFi space. And how to do that is by providing that UX, that insane UX that is already provided by usually fintechs in the world, neobanks, and just as fintechs, they have an interest into integrating DeFi, because you can provide better rates. You don't rely on banks or TradFi rails, so you can better own all the stack and the products. Also, from an operational cost perspective, it's way cheaper, so you can take more margin, make more profit, and in all of this at the same time providing the best product to your user. So there's a real interest on the fintech side. For the user, it's better because they have like better rates. And for DeFi, it's better because deeper liquidity means better rates, better price, etc. And with Coinbase, even though it's a centralized exchange that is crypto native, etc., a big part of their strategy is actually to provide a very nice user experience through them, the Coinbase main app. And this is why it was super important, is because this is the biggest integration of like a very fintech like experience with a DeFi protocol in the backend, with no intermediary between both, and that's just that just created a playbook for, I think, many more integration that have happened following that, but also are in the pipe.
Yeah, I guess, can you speak to maybe some of those other integrations, or sort of how you're thinking about that growth playbook, like from here? Is it,
Yeah,
I know Morpho's been deployed on, a bunch of EVM chains. So I guess, how are you guys thinking broadly about, growth of the protocol?
Yeah, so maybe I can talk a bit about the playbook first, actually, so Coinbase, they started integrating the borrow side, but usually integrators will actually deploy on the earn side and then integrate borrow, while Coinbase did the opposite, but both works. And the cool thing that you can do if you create those two products, like borrowing against a collateral and lending, in their case, it's USDC. Now you can lend USDC and borrow USDC against Bitcoin. And the cool thing is that the USDC that is lent by their users is directly lent to other users on Coinbase that wants to borrow Bitcoin. Borrow USDC against their Bitcoin. So you see that it creates a very nice flywheel where the supply just like feeds the demand, and everything is like internal at Coinbase, and it's on Base, so it's just like grow their network. So it's very nice, and there's a lot of fintechs or centralized exchange that can do exactly the same thing on Morpho, on Base, or on other chains. And by the way, on Base you see like other. So there's a crypto native fintech that is called DBlock that has integrated Morpho on Base, and they are lending USDC. And because there's such demand for borrowing USDC on Base, thanks to Coinbase users, there's always like a very high rate. To provide like some figures, I think there's 1.5 billions of Bitcoin as collateral from Coinbase to borrow almost, I don't know, maybe 1 billion. And on the earned side, it has only been like shipped like 1 or 2 months ago, 1 month, and there's already 300 millions. So you see that there's a lot of retail users that actually were just on the centralized exchange that are actually coming on chain. So there's real demand from users. And so this playbook can be repeated on any chain or the same chain to benefit from the liquidity that is already there. And it is quite simple. It's now it's super simple to integrate Morpho. The vaults are following like a well-known standard. And there's also abstraction if you're using like, I don't know, wallet providers like Privy, Gelato, those kind of things as a fintech or centralized exchange, which many do. Now you can have like native integration. So it's actually having like maybe toggling a button sometimes to enable those kind of experience for their users.
Nice. Merlin, you mentioned, timing the release of products with the maturity of the industry, and we've seen Morpho go from like modular lending, integrations in the front ends, vault creation, and then having with these fixed rates. Something else to mirror the TradFi analogy is under-collateralized lending. Do we see that in the future as a Morpho product, and if so, maybe when?
So actually, with Morpho V2, you can do under-collateralized loans. We have a few teams that were considering using their own stack to do this, and now are considering building on Morpho V2 because they will have the whole infrastructure and they can focus on actually, okay, I have some specific type of clients. So it could be like large entities, businesses. In this case, it's quite easy, but it could be individuals, so they must have maybe a credit score, or maybe it's like for mortgage loans, etc. And in every cases, you need some very specific knowledge about that, which is something that I don't think Morpho will work on it. So because we are more here to provide the infrastructure, the credible, neutral infra that will empower everyone to build their own use cases, but will happily help them like build on top of Morpho. And I think this is more the way we'll envision that those kind of partnerships. But this is definitely in the pipe. When it will be released, I think maybe just soon after Morpho launch. I can't commit and say it really depends on those teams, but I know there's a bunch of them that are working on Morpho and thinking about using V2 and leveraging V2 for that. And it would be super nice because, I mean, we haven't seen PMF on that sector. Why it's a very large part of the financial system right now. So of course it will come on chain. When is more the question.
Okay, love to hear it. Thanks.
Yeah, maybe getting out of the product a little bit and to the Morpho token a little. I'd be curious on your thoughts. I think it's pretty clear you guys are optimizing for growth today. I know Morpho has a fee switch, but it's, I believe, not active or not turned on yet. But I guess how are you guys thinking about maybe some eventual transition from pure growth to like a value accrual to the Morpho token? I know that there was you guys made an announcement maybe a month or two ago about changes to how the foundation and ownership of the token is handled.
Yeah,
sort of like set the path for that. But any thoughts you have?
Yeah, I think you mentioned that the dissolution of the labs entity is that correct? Okay. Yeah, so it's because I think most teams are advised to do that kind of setup. There's a lot of it's quite recurrent in the industry where you have the foundation on some on one side and the labs on the other side. I think we're going to see that a merge of everything, just because from like an efficiency point of view, you don't want to like split. I mean, you don't want to split the engineering part of the business part, for instance. Even though they're kind of doing different things, they still need to coordinate, and to coordinate, having one single entity is way more efficient, and you can go way faster and be much more successful, which is better for everyone. So I think we'll see like some entities to merge again, and this is something that on our side we had the labs, and we decided just to remove that labs and to only have one incentive, which is the token value, and that is the incentive that should drive everything for everyone within the Morpho Labs, but also has a token holder. You're sure that everyone is aligned. So that's why we decided to do that. So, and the second question was, when are we going to come from like a growth mode to a more like a revenue generation mode? Was it the question? Well, the DAO could decide to activate the fee switch. I personally don't think this is the right time, because even DeFi is in growth mode. The whole blockchain ecosystem is in growth mode. And if you check like the biggest companies, most of them, like for a long time, did not really generate revenue, and they focused on growth. And once they had the whole markets, then turn on the fee, or like whatever was their business model. And at that moment, I think we were pretty early. I mean, Morpho Labs is only 4 years, and I think we won't see the whole financial system fully on chain before like maybe in 10 years, 15 years. It can take a lot of time. So of course there will be maybe trillion dollars before, but the financial system is very, very large. We're just like a drop in the ocean. And so I would focus on growth for still like a few years maybe, but anything change as well. So maybe in 2 years I would have like another thought, and I think that it's the right moment to turn on the fee switch.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think your point about, it's a common theme to see the sort of split between labs entity and the sort of token organization. It's kind of a sticking point, I think, for a lot of protocols in the space. So great to see you guys take that step. I get the comment around revenue is really just, I think we see a lot of teams trending in that direction of, wanting to get to doing buybacks right away. So just curious how you guys are thinking about that, and if you feel any pressure from the market, basically.
So from the beginning, there was a lot of discussions around how should you set up the governance framework? Should you use tokenomics? Should you use another system, etc.? And at some point we realized that we were spending a lot of time researching those design and trying to say whether we should create a staking module, etc. Why, in fact, if you really think about it, the most important thing is the product. And it's the protocol itself. And we just need to build the best protocol of the whole ecosystem on our specific sector, and be the very, very best at what we're doing. And then liquidity will come, and user will come. Of course, with like doing business, etc., and not just like releasing the protocol like this. but really focus on trying to create the best experience and the best product, and that for retail users to very large asset managers in the space will, I think, bring a lot of people to Morpho, and that will drive value to the token. And without that, it's the best way we can provide value to the token, instead of trying to have like the best governance system that is, we'd rather focus the resources on where it matters most.
Awesome. I think that makes a lot of sense. Got a couple minutes left, so I guess I'll leave it open to you. I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts just going into the future, next 6-12 months with Morpho? What are you excited about? Looking forward to expansions, products. What are you thinking about right now?
So, Morpho V2, we already talked about that. I think we are... I can't talk about it, but I think we're going to see actors that haven't been doing much on chain to do stuff on Morpho. And I think it will be another 0 to 1, the same way that Coinbase was a 0 to 1 for the DeFi Mullet. I think we'll see DeFi Mullet from institutional, like, coming on chain, and also very large financial infrastructure that coming on chain and do stuff. This is why I'm super excited, because it will just bring DeFi, propose DeFi to another totally new space. And I think this is super exciting to see.
I get maybe one more thing for you. I have seen some lending teams, I guess maybe Camino is an example, where they've leaned into sort of additional verticals. Like they have a swap product now, and are maybe kind of eking their way into some different, not quite lending specific products or markets. Is that something you guys are thinking about? Or are you still very focused on what are all the lending opportunities available?
One of our value is laser focused. So, and I said it earlier, we want to do one thing, but do it perfectly. And we want to be the best at this. At the moment where you try and you start building on another protocol, that means you have to dedicate other resources, which cut resources from the major protocol and product that you were working on. So this is not something that we want to do. We'd rather partner with like great protocols that are doing this already. So you mentioned like swap. So for instance, DEX is we could work with Aerodrome, for instance, or Uniswap, and I think we'd rather do that because they are the best one in their own category. And if you take the best, then you can do like magical stuff. And I think it's much more exciting and also like less time consuming, so that we can focus on really what we know. And yeah. And also it avoids having like multiple competitors. So no swap, no stablecoin, no perps, just lending and be the best one.
Gotcha. Okay, so no perps farming campaign. Makes sense. I guess I'll leave it up to you to close out. Where can people hear more, learn more about from you,
Sure.
Morpho, and what you guys are doing?
So website, morpho.org. The Twitter is Morpho Labs. And my Twitter is Merlin Egalite. I don't know how to say that in English. But yeah, you can follow us on Twitter, and you'll see us at some point anyway.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on today, Merlin. It was a pleasure having you on.
Thanks, Danny. Thanks, Mark. It was a pleasure. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye. All right. Before we jump in, I know we've got Luke joining us from Moonwell. I'm going to do one last shout out to our sponsors for today's stream. Quick shout out to Katana. Katana is an L2 built for DeFi and is pioneering the ecosystem category of productive TVL. In just 2 months, Katana has surpassed 500 million in TVL, with over 90% of that TVL being productive in ecosystem apps like Sushi and Morpho. It's kind of funny. From now until the end of November, users that bridge to Katana can earn boosted yield from CAT incentive campaigns, added VaultBridge yield, and other chain revenue. Follow the link in today's show notes to get started. as well as Allora. AI is fragmented. Every team is scrambling to pick, swap, and manage LLM models that can't keep up. Allora changes that. Instead of choosing models, you set your goal, and Allora unites AIs into one smarter system. The result, a new AI standard. Predictive intelligence that adapts in real time, outperforms any single model, and gets better as more people contribute. From powering DeFi strategies to next-gen AI agents, Allora is the intelligence layer of the future. Learn more at X at Allora Network. All right. Thanks so much to our sponsors. Let's jump back into it. I know we've got Luke here, just joined us in the lobby. Thanks for coming on, Luke, founder of Moonwell, and Mamo as well, which we'll get into. Glad we could have you on as part of, we're doing a little bit of a base day today. Just spoke with Aerodrome and Morpho team members. I get to kick things off, I guess, if you can give us some background on yourself and Moonwell, where you came from, what you guys are building, and then we'll go from there.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me today, Danny. Mark, it's good to be here. By the way, I hope that my connection holds up. I am currently commuting into the office, and I'm on like a Wi-Fi hotspot. I'm in the backseat. Don't worry, I'm not driving. So anyways, just wanted to thank you for having me. And yeah, so my background, I worked at Coinbase for a few years, helped launch Ethereum staking rewards, as well as a bunch of other staking products. And that was my first foray into crypto professionally. Since then, I founded Moonwell in early 2022, and we've grown to be one of the largest native lending apps on the Base network. We currently have two different types of money markets. One is a multi-collateral that is very similar to Aave or Compound, where you can supply any collateral and borrow any asset. And we're really proud to support some of the best Base native assets like Morpho, like Aero, like Virtual. As collateral. And then the other the other type of markets we have is our isolated markets built on top of Morpho. And we curate vaults on the Morpho ecosystem. You just had a chance to talk to the Morpho team, and we couldn't be more excited about curating some of the top vaults on Base, including the Moonwell flagship USDC vault that supplies borrowable liquidity into Coinbase's Bitcoin Borrow product that's built on top of that. And then, more recently, we launched the Mamo agent, which is a personal finance agent that helps you, learn about crypto and earn a higher than average savings rate by supplying borrowable liquidity to those USDC borrowers on Coinbase. Really excited to kind of talk about how the Mamo agent makes using crypto easy for onboarding and also helps you auto compound your gains. But thanks for having me, and glad to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you on. I guess I'll ask first, since I'm curious, maybe I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you guys originally launched within the Moonbeam and sort of like Polkadot ecosystem. And I guess I'm curious, transitioning or expanding into Base maybe 2 years ago or so now. What sort of, spurred that decision and, leaning into the Base ecosystem, and obviously that's been successful for you, but just curious how that transition played out and what you guys were thinking, and how you're thinking about that change now.
Sure, yeah. When we first launched in early 22, we were launching on the Polkadot ecosystem, as you mentioned, and our thesis for Polkadot was that at the time, DOT was a $30 billion collateral asset. So we saw the opportunity to basically be, the primary lending protocol in the Polkadot ecosystem. Now that opportunity didn't really pan out as we expected. DOT is no longer a $30 billion market cap collateral asset. And so when we learned about Jesse launching the Base network in early 23, we decided to pivot to the Base ecosystem. So what we did is we made the Well token multi-chain, and we upgraded our governance system so that we could govern the Base protocol as well as launch on OP mainnet optimism. And that's been a pretty good success for us. It took us a bit of work to kind of launch what we call Moonwell V2, which is the current app that you see today. We still support Moonbeam, but most of our liquidity, over 90% of it, is on the Base ecosystem, and then most of the rest of it is on OP mainnet. So it's been a pretty successful pivot for us. Being early to Base really helped us. I think we were there a few weeks before the Aerodrome team launched. And it's been really exciting to grow alongside the entire Base ecosystem, and kind of be the first to launch a lot of these native Base assets. on our lending protocol.
I guess I've kind of been asking everyone this today, but curious your thoughts here as well. But we see this with Aero, with Morpho, the Base and Coinbase is kind of leaning into this DeFi Mullet playbook with various products. Curious if that is something that you guys are thinking about with any of the products that you're building and rolling out, and maybe how integrations into Base or Coinbase products kind of might come your way in the future or be like positive catalysts.
Yes, absolutely. We already participated in one of the DeFi Mullet products, which is the Coinbase Bitcoin Borrow product. If you open the Coinbase app on your phone and you scroll to the bottom of the main page, you'll see borrow against your Bitcoin. Our Morpho Vault, the Moonwell flagship USDC vault, supplies some of the USDC liquidity into that DeFi Mullet product. And the way it works basically is that you can take out a loan against your Bitcoin on Coinbase. Coinbase actually wraps it as CBBTC, creates a smart account wallet for you, and supplies it on the Base network into a Morpho isolated market, and then allows you to borrow USDC against it. You can borrow up to 86% loan to value, and you repay it on your own terms. Now, the thing that makes that possible, obviously, is the Morpho primitives, but we're really proud to kind of be one of half a dozen or so vaults that supply liquidity into that market. And then Coinbase just launched a new product called Earn, which allows you to kind of supply USDC liquidity through a vault. Now, that vault is currently being curated by Stakehouse Financial, but we are keen on getting our own vaults into that Earn product as well, because that kind of allows Coinbase users to provide both sides of that, that lending opportunity. You can either borrow against your Bitcoin, or you can supply the borrowable USDC coin liquidity. And I think that for those of us that have been early to Bitcoin and Ethereum, we understand that the most durable use case in crypto really is borrowing against your coins. Most people that are holding Bitcoin for years, since it was below $100,000, don't really want to sell it right now. I want to keep holding it, but they also want to get liquidity so they can buy things in the real world, maybe get leverage to go long or run advanced trading strategies. And these DeFi Mullet products allow people the opportunity to do that. And then the third thing we're participating in is really the on-chain swaps that are coming to the retail app. So you may have heard of this. It was announced at the State of Crypto Summit in New York a couple months ago. Coinbase announced that they're launching on-chain swaps using DEXs like Uniswap and Aerodrome. And that allows 100 million plus monthly active users in the Coinbase retail app to actually trade or swap any token on Base. Now, you might ask, how do we participate in that ecosystem? Well, the Mamo agent actually is market making on a lot of these high volume, high liquidity pairs on the Aerodrome DEX. If you look at the Aerodrome DEX and go to the liquidity section and just type in Mamo into the token search, you'll see that Mamo agent is actually providing liquidity in about 19 pairs. And the Mamo agent actually has a custom smart contract system we call the burn and earn or transfer and earn system that allows us to kind of take that liquidity position, that LP token, and put it into that custom contract, and then redirect all the fees generated by trading activity on that liquidity provider position to the Mamo depositors. So that's kind of a unique way that Mamo agent can kind of earn market making fees on the Base network, and we're really excited to kind of lean into that as Coinbase expands that capacity, that the on-chain swaps, and rolls it out to more and more of their users and starts to market it. We have a really strong thesis that there will be a lot of trading activity on Base, and we want the Mamo agent to capture a percentage of that as a market maker.
I kind of wanted to. We're gonna dive into the Mamo agent a little bit more, but I kind of wanted to rewind a little bit and ask. You're having such great success on Base relative to Polkadot, and especially with the DeFi Mullet integrations. But I kind of wanted to ask, were there any other trade-offs to moving to Base that you saw, and like how did the community take it? Because I know a lot of other teams are thinking about making this move as well.
Yeah, I would say that it's been a really nice jump to the Base ecosystem because there are so many infrastructure pieces that are available to you. For example, all of the things you might need to launch a product on Base, whether it's DeFi product or more in the creator space, are there. For example, we needed chain link price feeds. They're available, and almost any pair you can think of has a Chainlink price feed. Also, just infrastructure like Etherscan or Base Scan, if you will, Tenderly for doing simulations. All that infrastructure exists, and it's quite robust. Where I would say there are challenges is really around liquidity, and I think it's because in general, Coinbase tends to have really good CeFi liquidity, but they're still learning how to get DeFi liquidity, and it's challenging sometimes to compete against ecosystems like mainnet, where there is over $100 billion of TVL on Ethereum mainnet, and so you have to kind of take a longer term thesis like we do that over time there will be trillions of dollars of stablecoin liquidity on the Base network, mainly due to Circle and Coinbase's partnership and the passage of the Genius Act. But in the short term, there is more stablecoin liquidity on Ethereum mainnet, and the reality is some of the biggest projects like Lido and Athena are on mainnet today. So that is something that Coinbase could probably improve on, is kind of attracting the largest DeFi projects to the Base ecosystem, and in a really first class way, and making sure that they're incentivized to have deep liquidity there.
Okay, that's really interesting. I haven't heard that one before about Base liquidity. I normally hear positive things, but it's good to know. And I guess that kind of ties into the Mamo agent there with the market making, right? So maybe kind of walk us through why the creation of it and the user flow and what problem you were trying to solve.
Yeah, absolutely. So the marketing is really a more advanced feature of Mamo, but the problem we were really trying to solve is kind of two problems. One is crypto is hard to use, and DeFi apps especially are hard to use. Most normal people, if you ask them to use a DeFi app like Moonwell, they would struggle with, okay, which wallet do I download, and how do I back up my seed phrase? They would ask you all these questions. So the Mamo agent is really designed to onboard normies to crypto and make it super easy for your friend or a loved one, family member, to go from having maybe money in a Bank of America checking account into earning 6-7% in DeFi by lending out your coins in a safe way, without having to download a wallet, without having to think about what apps to download. It's just very easy onboarding experience. And then the Mamo agent is your personal finance tutor and can kind of help guide you and help you learn about how to save, how to build healthy habits, like how to dollar cost average, how to set aside a little bit from each paycheck to kind of grow your portfolio. It doesn't give financial advice, but it's more like financial hygiene, if you will, like how to build healthy habits. And then the other nice thing about the Mamo agent is that it makes sure you're always earning the best rate at all times. And the Mamo agent, we designed a fully audited smart contract system where the agent never takes custody or control of your user funds. So you remain in control, and your funding wallet is the only thing that can withdraw from your dedicated smart contract. But the Mamo agent can make sure that as the rates change on chain, you're always earning the best rate, whether it's in the Moonwell core market for USDC or in the vault, the Morpho Vault. And sometimes the rates do fluctuate pretty wildly. For example, when people are going leverage long Bitcoin, the core market rates can spike to double digits, and the Mamo agent makes sure you capture that higher interest rate, even if it's just for a few hours. And it auto compounds your gains back into the underlying position, USD coin, or we also support Coinbase wrapped Bitcoin. So I found it to be, really compelling, not just for new people that are new to DeFi or people that are new to crypto, but also for DeFi whales like me, where I can actually keep my funds in a cold wallet. And the Mamo agent can compound them for me, which is something I used to not be able to do in DeFi. So it can be quite useful for people that are DeFi veterans. And then, like I mentioned earlier, the market making fees are really the way we think about the Mamo platform itself evolving over time. The Mamo token is more of a utility token, where it confers 100% of the fees generated on the Mamo platform. And the Mamo platform is really designed to designed to be a platform for personal finance agents, more than just lending agents. In the future, we'll have trading agents as we figure out how to make those safe so they can't lose funds. And the key there is that the Mamo agent platform fees come from two different areas. One is from compounding fees, which are 0% right now, but will be turned on in the future, maybe next year. And then also the market making fees that the agent makes by building liquidity on the Aerodrome and Uniswap dexes. And so those market making and compounding fees all flow through 100% to Mamo depositors or Mamo holders. If you just hold Mamo and deposit into your Mamo account, every week there's a Mamo drop. And you'll see us announce that on the Mamo X handle. And that basically takes all of the trading fees in both form of Bitcoin and Mamo itself and passes them back to Mamo depositors. Those are actually real yield and not token emissions. So that's important to note that there's no liquidity mining incentives or anything like that. Those are all actual fees generated by the Mamo agent on a weekly basis. We hope to see those increase over time as the on-chain swap volume increases on the Base network.
I guess, Luke, I'm curious, since you just went through the whole breakdown of the Mamo token, what was the reasoning or thought process behind, breaking that out from Moonwell and creating a separate token alongside kind of the launch of the Mamo product, rather than having it sort of all wrapped up into Moonwell? Curious just what the thought process was there and why you chose to go that route.
Yeah, I think in general, we wanted the Mamo agent is very different than Moonwell itself. So Mamo kind of sits on top of Moonwell, and it leverages the Moonwell markets and vaults to kind of provide that base layer of like that lending primitive that allows us to earn, a higher than, high yield savings account yield. And basically, the Mamo token itself is not a governance token, like the Moonwell token is. The Moonwell protocol is governed by over 100,000 token holders, and it needs to remain incredibly neutral and, kind of provide that base layer of, money markets and vaults. But at the Mamo layer, Mamo can be more opinionated, and Mamo can, try to find the best investment opportunities for you. So I think it makes sense to have Mamo be, a separate project that sort of sits on top of Moonwell. In the future, Mamo may expand to other networks. We're considering, things like World Chain, where there is high volume of, retail users, because Mamo kind of hits that sweet spot of, being really easy to use and being able to onboard normies to crypto. And so we want to kind of meet users where they are, whether it's, on the Base network, on a World Chain, or maybe even on other networks like BNB Chain in the future. And so I think that gives us, and it also gives us the Mamo platform the opportunity to evolve in ways that are different than just Moonwell being a core lending primitive. For example, evolving into trading strategies and other types of strategies.
Gotcha. Makes sense. So, potentially some different vision between what the Moonwell product is versus what the Mamo product might become. Makes sense to kind of split them out.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess another thing, we've been talking a little bit about vault products. We had Morpho, we had Merlin from Morpho on previously to talk about Morpho in general, but I guess Morpho Vaults, you guys have integrated a few of those and have your own sort of like Moonwell Morpho Vaults listed on the platform. Curious if you can walk us through like your decision to build those out and like, thoughts about either how you're expanding those vaults going in the future, or what that really brings to Moonwell as like a, broad product offering versus just, you have the base lending markets, what, bringing vaults into the picture did for you guys.
Yeah, it actually provided a really nice new revenue stream where we could actually earn vault curator performance fees by kind of curating some of the safest and highest quality vaults on the Base network. And what differentiates our vaults from some of the others is that we have a really strong risk management team, Block Analytica, and Backstop Protocol. They provide risk curation for SparkDAO on mainnet. It's a multi-billion-dollar TVL. It's a sub-DAO in the MakerDAO ecosystem, the Sky Money ecosystem, and so they have really deep expertise on kind of how to manage risk on our flagship vaults. And there are two main vaults that, well, actually four, I should say, but there's the USDC and Bitcoin vaults. The Bitcoin vault actually generates yield using a Pendle strategy, and so it's able to generate just under 1%, which isn't as much as USD Coin, but it's nice to be able to kind of stack more Bitcoin, if you will, by simply depositing in that vault. And then we also have ETH and Eurocoin vaults that are quite popular as well. those vaults have allowed the DAO to generate a new revenue stream that actually flows back through to well stakers, through people that stake well in the safety module and provide shortfall insurance and participate in governance get rewarded through excess protocol revenue. And so that has created a nice new revenue stream that allowed us to kind of expand the Moonwell ecosystem. And the other benefit to, vault depositors is that I believe they're the only vaults that are actually owned by a DAO with over 100,000 token holders. Most of the vaults out there are just basically owned by a few people on a multi-sig. And so there is, some risk there in terms of governance surface area. When you have a smaller set of multi-sig signers, the vaults could theoretically have some governance takeover risk. And so we think that having a DAO actually own those vaults gives us an advantage in terms of, decentralization. And then the other thing I would say is that we just recently launched a new vault called the Moonwell Ecosystem USDC Vault in partnership with Dromos Labs, who is the risk curator on our core protocol. And that new vault will supply directly into Moonwell and Staked-Well markets, as well as a Mamo USDC market. And that allows people to actually borrow against their well or staked well on Morpho in an isolated way. And we're working on a way that you can actually retain your governance rights. So you'll be able to, in the near future, stake your well, have full governance rights, as well as, capture fees generated by the Moonwell protocol and borrow against your staked well. And the Moonwell Ecosystem USDC Vault will provide that borrowable liquidity side of the equation. This is actually pretty key for us as well as for well holders, because it not only lets you get leverage against your staked well, but it'll also allow us to kind of expand the Moonwell ecosystem without selling tokens. As we want to grow and build more AI agents and more personal finance agents, we really think we have a moat here in the space where we have the only personal finance agents that can't lose funds, because it's the agent doesn't take custody of funds. And so we want to kind of lean into that and hire and grow the Moonwell team and the Mamo team. And the way to do that, I think, is to kind of finance that growth, not by selling tokens, but by borrowing against our tokens. Since we have these on-chain money primitives like Morpho, like the Moonwell core markets, we can actually borrow against our treasury, our foundation treasury. And, just that way it allows us to kind of finance ecosystem growth without selling tokens. In the crypto space, many teams do have to sell tokens to kind of finance operations, but we realized, like, hey, we have these money markets, why not leverage them for this purpose? It's kind of interesting, I think.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to approach sort of like debt financing for growth purposes, I suppose. But in the sort of DeFi way, I guess, are you concerned at all about obviously, Moonwell maybe is not as systemically entangled as Curve was when large Curve positions became kind of an issue in DeFi back in 2022, I want to say, during the bear market. I guess, are you concerned at all about, borrowing against those positions to fund that growth, the potential downside risks that might have in a kind of, maybe a flash crash or other sort of scenario that might, warrant needing to address like a potential liquidation or something along those lines?
Yeah, definitely. We want to make sure that we're pretty safe. And so we're keeping that loan at a really high health factor, like, 2-to-1 or higher. And also, the 10-10 crash, actually recently, we were, even at that crash, we were still at 1.5-to-1, but we plan on adding more collateral. So the way to kind of work around that is just keep super healthy levels of collateral, 3 or 4x more capitalized than it needs to be on the loan to value. So that way you can kind of weather any flash crash. And also it's really important to kind of be responsible and not, draw down that credit facility too much, and just kind of have sustainable growth. But over time, as the market cap of the Moonwell token grows, hopefully we'll be able to kind of expand the credit we draw from that facility. And also, I think it's important to sort of pay back those loans with protocol revenue over time as well. So, but yeah, it's definitely something to keep in mind. I remember, that weekend when Curve was losing a lot of its value, and that loan was at risk of defaulting and potentially like causing bad debt on Aave. Luckily that didn't happen, but it is top of mind. I think that was a cautionary tale, especially with like the volatility we've seen recently and just since 1010. It is quite a scary time to be borrowing or using leverage of any type in the crypto markets. Now, I will say, like, there was, it's really fascinating. Those of you that study, you guys probably researched this pretty heavily, but a lot of the altcoins that were traded on Binance did have really low prices that were printed on the price feeds. Morpho, Arrow, Virtual, all three were kind of impacted in the Base ecosystem. It is more of a Binance like liquidator issue, as I understand it. The liquidator might have run amok, but that doesn't help the fact that DeFi just relies on these price feeds to kind of liquidate underwater loans. So we do have to be careful and make sure that we're not susceptible to those sort of flash crash type events, because crypto is definitely not as mature as traditional finance, where these things have been kind of properly fixed in previous years.
By fixed, you mean shut down the exchange for 15 minutes to let everybody cool
Circuit
down.
breaker. Yeah. And to be fair, circuit breakers probably don't work in DeFi when you shut down one exchange and people can just trade on another, right? So it's a hard problem to solve, but also I think we need more maturity. We need like probably a market structure bill, right, to help guide some of these exchanges on what the proper way to liquidate positions is.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that was a pretty thoughtful answer on kind of the risk balancing there. Maybe one more thing that we haven't talked about, but I see Moonwell does also have a card product, and this has been, I think that cards, like DeFi cards, have become something of a theme here in the past year. I feel like this is one of the things that everyone's talking about lately. A ton of teams are launching kind of their own card products. So I'm curious how that kind of wraps into the Moonwell experience and what you guys were thinking in rolling out the Moonwell card.
Yeah, it's been a really great last year or so. I think we launched the Moonwell card in December of 2024. So it's almost our 1-year anniversary in a couple months. And we thought pretty deeply about how do we design a card that could be used alongside a lending protocol, and we kind of have two different ways to use it. One is to borrow against your crypto and load the card, and then another way is to auto load the card. And both have been pretty interesting. Borrow and load is a feature that Bitcoin or Ethereum, staked Ethereum holders find really popular. Auto load is more for a neobank type user that just wants to hold stablecoins in their wallet or in the Morpho Vault, earning 7-8%, and then have the card auto loaded whenever the balance falls below a certain threshold. And that feature is actually quite a fun feature. I use it personally because we developed a custom smart contract that has a rate limit, so you can decide, hey, my card can get loaded $500 per day, and that sort of protects you in case you lose your card or get stolen online from someone draining your vault. But we think that feature is pretty compelling for people that live outside the US. If you live in Latin America or parts of Asia where you don't have good banking services, you can keep most of your funds in stablecoins in a vault, earning a good yield, and then shop with a Visa debit card anywhere Visa is accepted, and automatically reload your card without having to load the app and manually load or anything. Now we can't actually pay you yield on the funds loaded on the card, which is why you want to auto load with a small percentage of your total holdings. But hopefully in the future we'll be able to offer something more compelling like that. And then as we evolve the card product, I think our next big milestone we hope to launch before the end of the year is to be able to offer customers cash back on their debit card purchases, some type of developer rev share, and you'll be able to choose if you want that in stablecoins or if you want it in some other token like Ethereum or Well. I think that'll be pretty compelling.
Very cool. That makes a lot of sense. I do think we see this more and more in your comments about for people outside the US, making use of US stablecoin holdings, basically avoiding inflation in a lot of countries where that's a systemic issue. It seems pretty compelling, and clearly, I mean, I've seen a lot of teams have been leaning into card products as of late. So interesting that you guys jumped on that, a while before this kind of more recent trend has popped up all over the place.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it could be nice to continue to expand that. We also have a pretty cool feature you might want to try out if you haven't seen it, is the virtual checking account. We partner with Bridge on this, and that allows you to get a US checking account no matter where you live. Pretty much anywhere in the world, you can get a US checking account. When you receive money in that account, it converts into stablecoins in your wallet on Base or OP mainnet. So it's quite a nice feature, especially for digital nomads or people outside the US.
Yeah, that's really cool. I will have to take a look. Otherwise, though, Luke, we are out of time. It was great having you on today to talk all things Moonwell and to round out sort of our episode on base builders today. I guess I'll give you the floor here for one last shout out. Where can people find you, Moonwell, and what should they look forward to?
Thanks. It's been great to be here. You can find us at moonwell.fi. And also try out the Mamo agent at mamo.bot, mamo.bot. Follow us on X. You can follow my handle, x.com/Luke Youngblood, or x.com/MoonwellDeFi, or x.com/Mamo. And yeah, thanks for having us, and it's great to be here. Have a great morning.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on, Luke. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Luke.
Thank you. Bye.
See ya. There we go. Alrighty. Well, Mark, that rounded out the episode for today. I don't know. I don't really have any last comments to give other than a lot of strong teams building on base. And I think the biggest theme that we see, and I think we're seeing this now from other, Binance is doing this as well, but the integrations with, from base to Coinbase, the exchange, is pretty meaningful. We kind of see that across all the teams today. And it's a big part of like product rollout and expansion. So
Yeah.
It is interesting to see how like meaningful that has been for growth broadly.
Yeah, the DeFi Mullet thesis is strong, and it's kind of blurring the lines of what is a corporate chain.
Yeah, definitely. And I think maybe somewhat tangential, but I saw that Jesse and CZ both tweeted this morning about tokens. Well, I think first of all, Coinbase listed BNB, and then also some like BSC assets are tradable on Base or the Coinbase app now, which was kind of like an interesting cross collab that I don't think we've really seen historically from, I think for a long time you don't really find like BNB or Tron or some of these assets on like US exchanges. So that's an interesting change in the tides, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. When I saw Coinbase tweet out BNB is now tradable, I was like, is that regulatory reasons? Are they trying to be more neutral? And then I saw Binance did the same, and I was like, okay, this is just like kumbaya mode. So yeah, I like it.
It's definitely interesting. But we can call it there. No more ad shout outs. Thanks so much for you guys for tuning in. Thanks so much to our founders and friends at Dromos Labs, Aerodrome, Morpho, and Moonwell for joining us today. I hope you guys like this one. We will see you again later this week. But until then, until next time. And hopefully Bach will be back and not sick for our next episode. But, everyone tell Bach to feel better in the Xerox Research Telegram chat. If you're not in the chat, join the Xerox Research Telegram chat. Check out the newsletter. Mark and our other research analysts write exciting, interesting stuff about the market every day of the week. So check out that. Otherwise, we will see you later this week.